For 40 years, CNN has earned its place in the world as the most trusted name in news.
I dedicate the news channel, the cable news network.
From war zones...
They're not just lobbing stuff at each other, they're trying to take each other's territory.
...to marking the most important moments of our time. Going there and being there first.
What we've seen here today, it's all a result of a conspiracy theory, and it's playing out in the streets of the nation's capital.
And now, it's your chance to learn from the undisputed news leader in the world, right in the heart of the Irish capital, Dublin. Introducing CNN Academy and University College Dublin's Masters in Journalism and International Affairs. An immersive graduate program, combining world-class journalism education with industry-led practical training and expertise. Discover what is impacting our world and how you can report stories objectively for a global audience. Engage with the very best of the legacy brand that is CNN and the academic expertise of University College Dublin's Clinton Institute. The Masters in Journalism and International Affairs. Your stepping stone to a career in journalism, politics, or business. You have arrived at the capstone. Come and start your journey with us.
Hello and welcome. I'm Professor Liam Kennedy, Director of the MA Programme in Journalism and International Affairs, an exciting collaboration between CNN and University College Dublin. As our video indicates, this is an innovative programme that very directly is going to link the classroom and the newsroom, and we think equip a new generation of journalists to report on critical global issues of the day. In order to provide us with some first-hand insights on what it means to work at the forefront of international breaking news, we are joined by Michael Holmes, the distinguished CNN news anchor and correspondent. I'll be talking to Michael about his experiences and insights for the first half of this webinar. In the second half, we'll outline the MA programme in more detail, and we welcome your questions or your comments at all times. Please use the Q&A box on your screen. Michael Holmes is an Australian news anchor and correspondent for CNN International, anchoring CNN Newsroom with Michael Holmes since 2019. He's been with CNN for 25 years and is a hugely experienced, widely respected and award-winning journalist who appears equally at home in a live studio or traveling and reporting stories from across the world. Michael began his career at the Daily News newspaper in Perth at the age of 17. He went on to work as a reporter for more than a decade for Australia's 9 network in Australia and in London. In those early career years, he covered the First Intifada, the fall of the Berlin Wall, the First Gulf War, and the Rwandan genocide. In 1996, Michael joined CNN, and over the last 25 years, he has spent much of that time on location, covering stories in all parts of the world and traveling to more than 80 countries. With CNN, he has covered numerous conflicts, including Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, the West Bank and Gaza. He reported on the war in Iraq from the very beginning, making more than a dozen trips there, usually for weeks at a time. In January of 2004, he survived an ambush on a 2-vehicle CNN convoy, which left 2 CNN staff members dead and 1 wounded. In the fall of 2016, he spent several weeks in Iraq, covering the Iraqi-led offensive to capture Mosul from ISIS. His reporting contributed to a 2016 Peabody Award for CNN. In 2015, Michael anchored CNN's breaking news coverage of the terrorist attacks in Paris, which was recognized with the 2016 Royal Television Society Award. He has also covered numerous natural disasters, and his coverage of the hurricanes Irma and Maria earned him an Edward Murrow Award. As an anchor, Michael has interviewed prime ministers and presidents of several nations, anchored countless live events and breaking news stories from around the world, and served as host and moderator at several CNN special events. Michael, thank you for joining us.
I'm delighted to be here. Well, when you list it out like that, I feel old.
Not at all. It's a storied career and a great deal has happened within it. And that's something I'd like to start to ask you a little bit about. Can you tell us a little bit about your career path into journalism? I mean, a Cub Scout at the age of 17, Atlanta anchor, that's quite a trajectory. Could you tell us a little bit about how you got into this journalism and more particularly into international journalism?
Yeah, well, I always wanted to be a journalist, and so from a kid, and when I was, I think, 13, I was freelancing for the weekend version of the newspaper I ended up working on, just covering little cricket matches and stuff like that. So I knew that's where I wanted to be. And, unlike the educated folk watching this who are in college, I never went to college. I got a job at the newspaper. I was still 16 when I got the job. I started when I was 17 and 2 weeks or something like that. The newspaper was great. That's where I wanted to be. I always wanted to work in newspapers. But after about, I guess it was five, 6 years or something like that, the local TV came after me and basically doubled the salary. So it was a pretty easy decision. Did that for a few years. And then there was four of us. This is a good story about taking risks, and risks can sometimes pay off. There was four of us, a cameraman, an editor, a sports journalist, and myself, all working at Channel 9 in Perth. And we all said, sod it, let's go to London. My father had done me the honour of being born in Reading, so I had a British passport. And off we went. And it ended up being the best thing I could have done. It got me out of a fairly provincial place in Perth, and ended up in the bureau for the Nine Network as their current affairs correspondent, and that led to a lot of the stories that you outlined there. It was great timing, the period I was in London, for massive world events, and it was a bit of a career maker in many ways, because when I went back to Sydney, I was a foreign correspondent instead of some kid from Perth, and so that was a great advantage. Getting to CNN, I'll try to keep it brief because it's a long story. It was, again, a stroke of luck. The current affairs show I'd been working with for years was, at one point, it was a terrific show. We did, integrated schooling in Northern Ireland, the rise of neo-Nazism in Western Europe. Great stories. And then over the years, once I got back to Australia, it became pretty tabloid, and I wasn't enjoying it. The ABC, the Australian version of the BBC, they started up a news channel for the emerging cable revolution in Australia. It was just starting up, but being a great government broadcaster, they screwed it up. We went into they spent millions of dollars. We were rehearsing for weeks, and then they went to the cable operators and said, "Here we are. We're going to charge you $7 a subscriber." And the cable channel said, "Well, you can sod off. We'll run something else," and it all folded. CNN had been a 15% stakeholder in that, and had a guy down there on secondment. And unbeknownst to me, and I wouldn't have had the balls to go to CNN and say, "Hire me," he went back and said, "Well, that was a waste of money, but you ought to have a look at this guy." CNN reached out, and that was how I ended up in Atlanta, a stroke of luck.
Well, you describe it as a stroke of luck. There has to be some talent in there as well. It can't all be, just good fortune. I mean, what about that period in London? You said so much is happening around you. And you said that when you went back to Australia, you weren't just the plucky kid, you were a foreign correspondent. I mean, that's quite something to put in a card, foreign correspondent. I mean, what did that mean to you at that point? And what was that job looking like then? And what does it look like today? Because that must be quite a change, I would think.
It is a change. I mean, being a foreign correspondent, I mean, to me, there's no better life. I mean, I love being on the road. I mean, I love putting on a flak jacket. With the Iraq War, I went there 17 times. And I was 4, I think, to Afghanistan, and I've been to the West Bank and Gaza probably 30 times. So over the years, since 1988 was my first visit there. A great honor. How it's changed, I mean, briefly, technology, expectations as well. It used to be that it was you, a cameraman, and a sound man. A sound man is now, a distant memory for most news organizations, but we used to have sound men, and it was the three of you, and off you went and you did your stories, and it was great. If you ever had to go live, well, you couldn't unless you had what we called an earth station, which was a giant mound of equipment, complete with a dish, and that was the only way you could go live. And that was a huge production to do that. How it's changed, fast forward to today, when you go out, it's you, cameraman, producer, and the technology has evolved to the point where we can be live from anywhere. You know, I remember using the BGAN for the first time in Iraq, and you know, it's the size of a laptop, and beam it up to the sky, and you're live. The other thing is the expectation of what you're meant to do, because now instead of doing the story for the nightly broadcast, and certainly when it comes to CNN, you can be doing live shots for hours on end. I think my record in a 24-hour period was 18 live shots covering Ukraine during the Maidan. And so you're having to do live shots, do packages, write something for the digital, you know, for the website, CNN.com, and at the same time, tweet and Instagram. And so it's become a whole lot more responsibility than it used to be.
But there's so much there. I mean, the packaging you're talking about, but also the way in which you have to become multi-skilled. Is that a fair phrase to use?
Yeah.
And is that something you learn in the job, or is that something that more now these days you're getting training and help with? I mean, how do you see that?
I'm sure. I'm sure there is training. I mean, I just learned it on the job, and you know, if you're around it long enough, and if you're interested, I mean, I've been able to go out on shoots, for example, and just over more than 40 years in the business, I know how to operate a camera. I know how to shoot. I know how to frame a shot, because cameramen have taught me this. So I've been second camera on some shoots when we've gone out in Iraq, you know, out on patrols and stuff like that. I'd be second camera, and I know how to edit if I have to. So yeah, you do have to be more multi-skilled and multi-platform now.
And that's definitely something that a younger generation of journalists are really having to take on board, isn't it, and adapt to?
Yeah. Definitely, absolutely. Particularly the social media stuff, which can be, you know, if we want to talk about social media, we can do that. But it's a great tool, and it is a minefield. You know, I always say about, you know, social media, that the great thing about social media is it gives everyone a voice. The worst thing about social media is it gives everyone a voice, and that can be a minefield. Yeah.
How does that minefield, I wouldn't say explode, but where does it get dangerous for a journalist, do you think?
Trusting what you read. You know, take Twitter as an example, and if you're covering a story or in a breaking news situation, you know, rule one is you don't take something off Twitter and broadcast it. Twitter can be, it's a source, it's a news tip that you then ethically and responsibly go and research and confirm before you even think about putting it on air, because it's often wrong.
I want to take you back just for a minute, because social media fascinates me and I want to ask more. But you mentioned the first Gulf War, and it occurs to me that that was an important moment for the development of media, but it was a very important moment for CNN looking back, wasn't it? In some ways, it helped make CNN as an international news organization. Would you agree?
Oh, 100%. I mean, it's not in some ways, in all ways, it put CNN on the map. I mean, it used to be, you know, known as, you know, chicken noodle news, and, you know, the little network that could, and blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, boom, it is the network. If you were wanting to come, you know, watch the first Gulf War unfold, you had to do it through CNN. We were the only ones going live from there. And it was a masterful technological achievement to do that under Saddam's you know, regime not wanting it to happen. So it was a remarkable time. I was working for Channel 9 Australia at the time, and I remember being agog watching it. I was meanwhile having to, you know, cover it from Jordan and Israel and places like that. And we'd go film our story, and then we'd have to go back, edit it, and go to a feed point and play it out that way, go to a local TV station or something and play it out that way. And there's CNN live, you know, the war live.
And we're on to, of course, 24/7, and we never look back in a way, isn't that right? I mean, that becomes part of the challenge, is that breaking news is just breaking all the time, it seems. So you really need a good, strong sense of what's happening in the international field, I imagine. Is that part and parcel of being a good international journalist? Having a, do you read a lot in it? Where do you get your news from, Michael? What are your filters?
That is exactly the advice I would give if you want to be, particularly an anchor. Correspondent, you can be focused on one thing and just know that, and that's your beat or your story for that moment. And that's where I love what I've been able to do over the years, which is to go out and be that correspondent. But then when I'm not that correspondent, I'm anchoring. So I've got the best of both worlds. And
right.
Being a correspondent makes you a better anchor. I'm firm about that. I don't think anyone should be anchoring television news unless they've been in the field. And I had the advantage of doing them both at the same time. What makes you a good anchor in breaking news, particularly situations, is having a broad knowledge of the current state of the world. It gives you depth when news breaks, and understanding of issues, names, geography, history, and it gives you the ability to put all that in perspective for viewers. So yes, I read all the time. The thing is, if I wasn't doing this, I would still read exactly what I read, because I'm immersed in news and I love news. And even if I didn't work at CNN, I would be doing it anyway. I read 6 or 7 newspapers a day online. I read monthly periodicals that go into in depth, like foreignaffairs.com, foreignpolicy.com. These are my sort of go-to places, as well as a broad range of newspapers. I've covered the Israeli-Palestinian conflict for 35 years, and so I will read a range of newspapers from the right and the left in Israel,
right.
And maintain contacts over there too, and social media as well.
It's great to hear that you're taking all of that on board, in part because with the new MA program, what we're trying to do is bring together that CNN training, but also academic knowledge and analysis of international affairs. And we think and we hope that can be a really good dynamic combination. You seem to embody it already. Listen, there's questions coming in. There's one I'd like to bring up for you, which is just because people are asking, I want to get everyone involved here. The question is this: what are the possibilities for someone entering journalism after switching careers? Is there a disadvantage not starting at a young age?
No, I know people who've done that. I know plenty of people who've done that. I don't know if it's something I'd recommend trying to get into at 40 or something like that. But if you're in your 30s and you've had another career, that career could bring depth to your journalism career. I mean, that's and we've had plenty of people start later. And certainly even within CNN have moved from other parts of the building and come across to the news side. That's not a hold back at all.
What then, in relation to, I suppose, the same question from your point of view, Michael? I mean, not from an educational point of view at all, but just as a working journalist. What are the skills in a journalist today that you would look for? What would have your antenna going up and saying, this person has what it takes?
Well, enthusiasm and love of news. I mean, somebody who is passionate about news and keeps themselves informed, and and enthusiasm. I mean, you've also got to be able to bloody write. If you can't write, you're not going to get very far. There's a lot of abilities you need. Being able to sort information, organize, prioritize, retain massive amounts of incoming data and stuff like that. But yeah, no, I'd look for enthusiasm and writing ability. I don't care what you look like. I like that about CNN. And that's a little story, actually, that when I love this about CNN. When they came to me when I was still in Sydney and asked me to apply, or offered me the opportunity, the first thing they said to me was, send us a copy of your CV. They didn't know what I looked like. They hadn't seen a tape. I didn't even have a show reel, I don't think. And I love that. They wanted to see what I had done before they even knew what I looked like. Right. So I always look back on that, and I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
What have you done?
Yeah. Real content, real quality we're looking for. Another question's come through off the back of that. This one from Dara. How beneficial or necessary are foreign languages for a journalist?
Handy if you've got it. It depends on what region you think you'll report in, but no, it's handy. It's not essential. Every time we go to a region, we have local producers and translators. We hire everywhere we go, and so no, you don't have to. I've picked up enough Arabic over the years to have a conversation at 5-year-old level, as I like to say, enough to get myself into trouble. And I speak a little French as well. That's handy. It's handy. I don't think it's necessary, but it's a plus if you can present that to a prospective employer. It's a plus.
Okay. Did you need translators for how the Irish speak English when you were in the north?
I can tell you a story about that, actually. Twice I have done interviews in English that I needed translated. And one was after the Piper Alpha oil rig explosion off Scotland. And we were up in Glasgow and interviewing people on the street. And I'd be like, what's your your reaction to this horrible thing? And they would respond, like, that terrible thing with all the wee bangs and the duds and that. And I'm just like, okay, thanks, and just move off and get someone else to tell me what they said. The other one was in north of you in Northern Ireland. One of the stories I did covering Northern Ireland was punishment shootings. For an Australian audience, they hadn't heard of what that was. And how punishment shootings work, and so I got these guys. You'd be kneecapped first, and then if you continued your misbehavior, you'd end up getting elbows shot, ankles shot, and then if you did it the fourth time, you get one in the head. So anyway, I interviewed these two lads who'd been kneecapped, elbowed, and ankled. Next one was a strikeout. And again, I had my set of questions, sat down, did probably a 20-30 minute interview with these two lads. I had no fucking idea what they said, none whatsoever. Went back to London, and we were based out of a building where WTN, Worldwide Television News, which is now APTN. And I went down and got an Irish guy down there. I said, come and translate this interview. And we had to subtitle it. And I didn't understand a bloody word they said.
If you ever need a translator, let me know. There's a couple more questions coming through. I'm just keeping up with them here. This one's from Devon. What kinds of roles are there beyond the on-camera correspondence anchor roles that might benefit from an education in journalism? Now, this one we can talk about later when we're talking about the program more specifically, but just from your point of view, I imagine you look around and there's a great many other roles at work there in CNN and international news beyond the anchor correspondent role, yes?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it depends what you mean. I mean, the people on the international desk, they're the ones that are in touch with the correspondents, in touch with the bureaus, assigning stories as directed. Crucial. They're our lifeline to what we're covering and how and who we're speaking to and stuff like that. I can't operate in the field without a talented field producer.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be on air, and I think being on air is great. I don't think it should be anyone's journalistic aim. There are plenty of massively rewarding and vital roles in television news that don't include having your face on the telly. Field producers, I can't say enough about that. I mean, I've not been able to do any notable assignment without having had a talented field producer. When we were covering the hurricanes, Irma and Maria, and we had to get from one place to one island to another, and the runways, we were chartering planes all over the region, and the runways were all damaged by the hurricane, and we're like, how are we going to get there? And my producer said, all right, I've chartered us a catamaran. this huge catamaran, 50, 60-foot catamaran, and we got there. Now I'm sitting there thinking, how are we going to get there? She's like, all right, we've got the yacht, let's go. And making things happen. So yeah, field producing is great, but as I said, you've got your international desk, you've got people who are putting the shows together, the producers, the writers, we have supervising editors and executive producers who are overseeing the whole shift. There's many roles, many.
I'm really glad you brought it up, because I do think still, when people think about international reporting as a career, some can be a little sort of romantic about the idea of the foreign correspondent, but there's just so much else going on. And one of the things we'll certainly attend to in the new course is, the question of production of news and just how rich a field that is and how many different roles are there.
I'd add one other thing that when you maybe if you look at my CV or whatever, I mean, it all looks so glamorous and you've been doing this and you've done that, and it's just amazing. I mean, I've been front row seat to history. I mean, standing in West Berlin the night that the Berlin Wall opened up, and Trabants are coming across from East Germany, and I mean, just unbelievably honored. That's probably the biggest story I've ever covered, I would have to say. But the other thing too is, depending on what type of correspondent you want to be, there's stuff that does not suit everyone, and what leaps to mind is being a war correspondent. I can't even remember how many wars I've covered, and as I said, I've been to Iraq 17 times. I nearly got killed there twice. It can be stressful, it can be dangerous. I have, during the course of the Iraq war, I lost 8 friends, not just colleagues, but people I knew well in that war. It can be terrifying. The hours are outrageous. The demands are outrageous. It's exhausting. So, be careful what you wish for if you want to go into certainly conflict journalism. It's hard, and you see horrible things. I mean, covering the Rwandan genocide. I've covered suicide bombings and wars and blah blah blah, and you see a lot of dead people. But Rwanda, oh my God, that was the worst story I've ever had to cover. And you look back on it now, and it was a major story in the context of my career because of what it was. But it was horrible. So again, just a little, be careful what you wish for. Choose where you want to be.
No, I think that's a good health warning for anyone who's interested in pursuing those kinds of careers. Another question up, this one about age, and links into something we've already been talking about. Asking about the correspondent longevity. Can one still be sent out on field assignments until an advanced age?
Yes, I was on standby. I really wanted to go, and I couldn't because they couldn't get another anchor to replace me on my shift. But the Jerusalem Bureau wanted me over there for this latest Gaza war, and I've been in Gaza many times, and I know Gaza. I think I'm known there. And the Bureau really wanted me to go in. They end up getting Ben Wiedemann, who's like the best guy for this, and nobody knows the Middle East better than Ben Wiedemann. But I was about to go. It didn't happen, but I'm 60, and I still throw on a flak jacket. And 2019, I covered riots in Venezuela. I covered the March of Return in Gaza. Where we got tear gassed. I got tear gassed on 2 continents within a month. I was getting tear gassed in Gaza, then getting tear gassed in Caracas. So yeah, no, I'm out and about. Yeah,
you're evidence of that answer. I think there's no question about it. Another one's come through a little like something we covered, but it's such a rich terrain. Sophie has brought this up. How has reporting internationally changed over the course of your career?
Well, as I said, mainly the breadth of what we're required to do now makes it a lot busier. Also, the difference between working for a nightly current affairs show or whatever versus CNN or Sky or the BBC World Service or whatever. The big difference is the demands on you.
Yeah.
Endless live shots, live shot after live shot, and you're expected to report, and you're expected to write a story for .com and tweet and Instagram and stuff like that. And your field producer helps you with a lot of that, but it's the breadth of what you're having to do and the demands on you has changed. And the other massive change, of course, as I said before, is technologically. We're not taking huge dishes anywhere anymore, and you can go live with the live view system, which is just a little bag, and it draws on cell phones. So as long as there's cell phone towers around, you can be live from anywhere, wandering around with just you and the cameraman.
Can you take us on to anchoring more now a little bit as a skill set, different from being a correspondent? Did you naturally flow with it, or was it scary to start with? How did you get into it? And having mastered it, what are the key skills?
Yeah, no, when I came over for CNN, I'd not anchored on air at all. I'd been in this sort of doomed ABC startup, which was anchoring, but I'd only ever been rehearsing, and I was terrible. And when I came over, 25 years ago, last April, I was terrified, and I look back on it now and I think, oh my God, you sucked. And yeah, now, yes, I'm totally comfortable. I mean, breaking news, I love it. Throw more at me. But back then, no. I mean, it's normal. It's normal to be terrified, and I think it was 6 months before I stopped feeling like I was going to throw up before every newscast.
What's the skill set sat in the chair, mate? What do you really need to be good at?
You need to be able to organize, prioritize. You need to have a breadth of knowledge. You need and developing that breadth of knowledge just de facto gives you confidence, which is the other big thing. You have to be confident in what you're saying, confident in how you deliver the information, and be able to impart that information. I never look at the teleprompter in the studio and think, oh my God, 10 million people are watching. That never crosses my mind. I'm thinking that, as I'm looking at you now, I'm telling you this story, and this is having the ability to connect with an audience you can't see. That is a talent as well, and it comes from experience. I mean, you're not going to be great at that right off the bat. No one is. But yeah, you need, and then you need to be able to think on your feet, particularly in a breaking news situation. You might be up there for 2 hours with no information, or very little, or dribs and drabs, or you might have to talk for 20 minutes before they've got a correspondent up or whatever. So you need to know the basics of what to say, importantly, what not to say. One like in a terror attack situation, until it's a terror attack, we don't say bomb, it's an explosion, until it's a bomb. These are mistakes that people make. The old adage, it's better to be right than be first, and that's got to be in the back of your mind. Don't be afraid to say what you don't know. We're still getting information in. What we don't know is this. That ability to think on your feet is a very important one, certainly for a breaking news situation. The rest of it is have the broadest knowledge you possibly can.
Questions have come in thick and fast here, and we don't want to take too much more of your time, but there's a few here I think are really good on the question of some of the challenges facing broadcast journalists and international journalists today. The first of these from David Clinch. David says, how can international journalists make important things interesting for an audience that's overwhelmed with so much information?
Well, I'll give you one example, and that is if you've got a huge story, I don't know if it's a natural disaster or something like that, or anything. It could be a conflict. I will always try to tell that big story through the eyes of one person or one family or whatever. And so you pick a family and you go through their day, them telling the story of what this bigger issue is. and humanize it. I mean, you know, one of the things that was difficult in Iraq covering that was just the volume of deaths. And you know, in 2006-7, when the sectarian killings were happening, we literally had a whiteboard in the bureau where we would mark down every day 60 dead, 70 dead, 120 dead, and these just become, you don't want your report to be numbers on a whiteboard. So you pick a family. I went and did a story on this one family where two sons, they ran a watermelon stall in a marketplace in Baghdad, and two sons were killed in a suicide bombing in the market. So then there's the father and another son, and no, the father and two other sons. And so about 2 years later, another explosion, another son was killed. The fourth son fled, just was destroyed emotionally and fled. The father then was looking after the wives and the children of all his sons in this little house and trying to make a living to support them. We went and told his story, and I think there was no better way of telling a story about what these bombings and sectarian killings were doing to average Iraqis, and telling the story through that man's eyes and his wife and the little kids everywhere living in this tiny little place. I think that was a way of telling that story that was enormously effective, and you know, telling it at a dangerous time. We had all sorts of protocols for going out and doing stories like that. We could only be there for 20 minutes, but yeah.
And that can make for very powerful journalism. And do you get a sense back from an audience that has impact, or how would you gauge that?
Well, how I would gauge that, it's very difficult with the televisions, because you know, the feedback I get, like I try to tweet out a lot of stuff that I do, and sometimes those tweets will take off, and then you know you've hit your mark with that. You know, the other thing too is writing it, and I try to write everything that I do in the field for CNN.com. There you get a measure of metrics of how many people have engaged with it, how long they've stayed with it, which is a very important metric. You might have, you know, 1 million people started watching this video, but if only 10,000 were there at the end of it. Right. So you learn a lot from that, but that's a way of gauging what impact you've had.
Well, another way of thinking about impact, and this is, I suppose, a somewhat more personal question, but really it picks up on what you've been saying. How do you balance a family and social living with the demands of being a foreign correspondent? And especially, how do you adjust coming home after witnessing some of the things you've been talking about?
Well, I'm divorced, so there you go. So how did that work out? No, I think it can be very demanding on a family. It can be, I mean, there's no shortage of divorced correspondents, male and female. It takes a toll. It takes a toll, and you have to, you know, be able to work on that, I guess. You know, it was interesting with my kids, because I've been doing this so long. My daughter's 23, my son is nearly 22. When I started going to Iraq, they were little, and they were sort of, oh, that's cool, that's great. Oh, my son would be like, oh, you're hanging out with soldiers, send me a photograph. And as they got older, and certainly after the ambush in 2004, when we were all nearly killed, and two of my friends, good friends, were killed, my cameraman sitting next to me got shot in the head. After that, the kids started to change, and certainly, you know, right through to the end of the US drawdown in 2011. Yeah, they started saying, "Please don't go, Daddy, you'll die," and that is hard to deal with, and you know, try to work it out. When I covered the Libyan revolution, I told my kids that I was doing refugees. I was nowhere near the conflict. Of course, we're right up the front line with the rebels from Zintan, and you know, taking cities and getting into all sorts of firefights. And my kids, the entire time I was there, did not know I was doing that, which I was delighted about. In terms of what you carry, CNN is terrific, and I think that all organizations should be like them, and I know others are. The BBC is, I'm not sure about Sky, but what CNN has is a program of, if you need help, it is there. It's no questions asked. We have on speed dial a psychiatrist is in Canada actually, and he is the world's foremost expert on PTSD specifically for journalists. He's on speed dial. You've got a problem, you call him, you talk it over. Nobody knows, and we're encouraged to do that. I actually have never done that. I think everybody's different. I've seen terrible things, and I think it's all to do with how you're wired. I don't wake up screaming at night. I have things that I'm still sad about, but I don't suffer PTSD. I just am able to deal with it. We had people come to the Baghdad bureau during the war, producers who never left the bureau. Their job was to, organize live shots, blah, 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 blah. It was dangerous to leave the bureau. Every time we left the bureau, it was a massive security event, and it was risky. Kidnapping was Iraq was the first war where journalists were not, sort of collateral damage. We were high value targets. They wanted to kidnap us and put us in orange jumpsuits. So that was a big shift from previous conflicts. But we had producers who were just there to be in the bureau. But every day there's boom and the windows rattle, another suicide bombing, boom, another. And we had producers who came in, and after 4 days of that, they said, I've got to go. I've got to go. And that's okay. That is absolutely fine. And we get them out. So that's what I mean about it's not for everyone, and different people handle different things differently. So it's a very individual situation.
All right, Mike, we're close to wrapping up here. Maybe two more questions, if that's okay with you. So, because there's still a few coming through here. One of them, it strikes me as an intriguing one. It's the challenges of just the news industry today. It's going through a rocky time. I think it's fair to say, right? There's challenging, business models out there, to take news online and to make it digital. There's, let's say, some challenges around the question of trust around news in many democracies today. Do you look at that larger picture with some concern in thinking about your industry, or are you more a glass half full kind of person?
No, I have major concern about it. I mean, what has certainly changed in my career enormously is the with the internet in particular, the dilution of news sources. I mean, it used to be that you had your main networks and your main newspapers, and these were trusted sources of information. Now, as I said before about Twitter, now anyone can be, I'm a journalist and here's my news website, and say whatever they like, publish whatever they like with no checks and balances. I go write a story in the field for CNN. The first thing it goes to is what we call the row, where they go through line by line, and they will always have questions. How do you know this? Where did you get this from? I think we need to get this other side into it, and let's add a sentence. It's a process, and you don't do anything until that's signed off. Yeah. There are any number of other places where the opposite happens. Throw it to air. I recorded this on my iPhone. Let's put it to air. So that's where trust issues are very real. I mean, I think those sort of basic networks and CNN and New York Times and the Washington Post and the BBC, these are still trusted and honorable sources of information, but the bad sources of information, the Fox Newses, the true fake news, I think that's damaged the broader industry, and so people will just choose to believe some utter freaking nonsense, and I think it's damaging to the industry, and I think it's damaging to societies and democracies as well.
Well, there's a lot of big challenges there. We're not going to shy away from them in our teaching any more than you shy away from them in your reporting. It's important to take them on. And that's my last question to you. It's a bit of a cliched question, but what's your advice to a young wannabe journalist?
Persistence. Don't give up. I mean, plenty of people have been knocked back 30 times before they got where they wanted to be. I would say be persistent. Use contacts. Use anyone you know. The thing with getting into a good job in journalism, a respected job, is getting doors opened for you. And that's about networking. It's about, you know, your dad's former college roommate who now works over here. Don't be shy about going there and asking for advice, or could you get me an interview, or please get my CV seen. Yeah. You know, I've done that for young people, you know, that you know, who I don't know directly, but who are recommended to me by people I do respect. And I've got, you know, I've said, hey, have a look at this guy's CV, which might not have even been seen. But the thing with being a successful journalist is having the door opened. Once you get through the door, then it's on you. And when I say luck in terms of things happening for me in my career, you know, the luck is, as you pointed out, the luck is that doors opened for me, or were opened for me, and I walked through them. Once you're on the other side of the door, it's on you. You better be good at it, or, you know, don't let people down. You know, that's where your skill set comes in. But yeah, be persistent. Use anyone you know. Don't give up. Don't give up.
Okay, it's a good place to finish. I wish we could talk longer, but thanks so much for sharing insights and experiences. Michael Holmes, thank you so much indeed.
Delighted. Thank you.
Okay, take care. I hope many of you are still with us, because what we're going to do now is we're going to be joined by my colleague, my erstwhile colleague, Ali Riza. Are you with us, Ali?
Hello, yes.
Ah, good. I was just making absolutely sure of that. So what we're going to do now is turn from what we've been covering here with Michael to think more about the new course that we're launching, and essentially this is a course that has been put together with CNN and University College Dublin, but more particularly CNN Academy, which is where Ali comes in, and the Clinton Institute Dublin, which is where I come in. In other words, we're I suppose somewhat responsible for hatching this in the earlier days. Would it be fair to say, Ali?
Absolutely, it's a work, it's a joint offering from both of us.
Okay, I'm just going to ask you to say a few words of introduction about yourself, because your background here is very relevant to what we're going to be doing in this program, because you bring a huge experience from CNN into the classroom directly.
Absolutely, yeah. So I have been working in international media for a number of years now. Before CNN, I was with Al Jazeera English in London. At CNN, I started off at CNN in London, and then I went over to Abu Dhabi, where I was executive producer of one of our flagship current affairs programs, Connect the World with Becky Anderson. Mm-hmm. And over the past couple of years, I've been working on the CNN Academy project specifically. And I'm heading it up right now. And you might ask yourself, well, what is CNN Academy? Why is CNN getting involved in these sort of university partnerships like the one that we have just announced with University College Dublin? To answer that, really, you have to take a couple of steps back. All of us at CNN believe journalism matters. We believe that we are in a great position, and when you hear someone like Michael and his breadth of experience and the types of stories that he's covered, the way he's covered those stories, we believe that we want to play an active role in empowering the next generation of global journalists. And we do have the experience to do that. Ever since the early days when sort of Ted Turner established CNN, we've been training journalists. Many of these have been our affiliate partners who've come through our training programs at CNN headquarters in Atlanta and other sort of broadcast hubs, where we've sort of imparted on them the best practices, what works from us, not only from an editorial perspective, but also from a technical perspective. So we're taking that legacy of training journalists and to use the quote from Michael, we want to open the door for the next generation of journalists. Recent studies suggest that the majority of journalist students who are able to enter the industry get that door opened for them. They do that either through an internship or some sort of work experience. What CNN Academy wants to do is it wants to offer these programs that give students the practical training and the opportunities for them to then be able to enter into the industry, enter into the job market with a practical training that they would never get if it was a purely academic pursuit. And that's really where this program that Liam, you and I have been talking about for a number of months now comes into the picture. It's combining that international affairs of the academic rigor of UCD Clinton Institute with those theoretical discussions that you have in the classroom, with the practical experiential learning that my colleagues like Michael and a host of other CNN journalists will bring to the program through the different ways that we will deliver it. Really exciting. It's the first English language master's program that CNN has designed and co-designed with a university partner. Our tagline is connecting the classroom to the newsroom. And really, if we look at the student journey here, and I'll come back to this other slide, but the student journey is this, the way we've envisioned it. Learn from CNN experts like Michael, get their experience, get their value input, connect with the CNN global content, the CNN news source, which you would have access to as a student on this course. Most importantly, apply what you learn in content, video, audio content that you produce throughout this program, and that final project that you do, which can also feature on CNN. So a rare opportunity for students to get their work published on a global platform. Yeah. So in a nutshell, that's how sort of we've seen this program. That's where we see the value proposition for students, and where we come in at CNN Academy. And CNN Academy is really a conduit for CNN newsroom journalists, working journalists, to come and connect with the classroom. And CNN Academy is the facility that makes that happen. And I know, Liam, that you wanted to discuss a bit more about the details of the program and sort of entry requirements and other details. And obviously the floor is open for any questions specific to the program that we can answer.
Yeah, most importantly, I want to encourage any questions that people may have, any comments you have on the program. The materials that are coming up now are just giving you some of the basics of what we do, how you can enter and apply. Those basic entry requirements are also, of course, on our website, along with a lot more information. Ali, is it possible just to go back there and look at the syllabus? I'll say a little bit about that. Yeah, it's just there, I think. Yeah. So again, lots more about this on our website. Please go and have a look at it. But it's just to give you a sense of how an academic year breaks down. It is a 12-month calendar year. Our trimesters break into these 3 blocks, and you would do a number of modules in the forms of seminars, workshops, training sessions, both with the faculty at University College Dublin and the faculty. Is that the word faculty? Do you use that word faculty in CNN, or you just, what word do you use?
Not yet. Maybe we'll adopt it in a while, but not yet. I mean, it's our journalists. It's our working.
Okay. All right, so we have faculty and journalists. All right, that's the language we're going to use. But the point is, we are really bringing these teams together, and for me, that's definitely the key exciting part of this, is to work in sessions with Ali and his colleagues. And so, just to give you a flavor of that in terms of how it breaks down, you would have a number of modules to do for 12 weeks in the first trimester, another set number of modules in your second trimester, and then I think it's very important just to point out you have a lot of time then to focus on something that I think can be a major platform for going forward, and that is your thesis, which can be written, textual, but it can also be multimedia. It can use different platforms. And as Ali has already pointed out, but I wanted to underline it, that's another area where the hands-on element of CNN, I think, comes into its own, is helping particularly those students who will take on multimedia thesis, not just to find something to work on, but to actually develop a thesis, which is something they're going to have to pitch to Ali and the team before they can even move forward with it, and is really going to have to, you know, pass muster in that sense, in terms of the kinds of quality that you know, producers at CNN would be looking for, and have access to those folks in CNN who may have knowledge, who may have particular expertise, who can help you with that thesis development. So one of the things clearly I think this does offer is terrific access to the industry, and you know, a hands-on element that, combined with the academic element, we hope is going to be exciting but also challenging for those of you who are interested in taking it forward. I'll just say a little bit about admissions, Ali, if you move up to that.
Absolutely.
Just looking at that, and then there's a few questions starting. I'll come back to those, but please have a look at the admissions details, because we have what we call staged admissions for this program. And that's because we anticipate a you know, a really quite, you know, competitive program, I think, in terms of applications. And so we're staging it out. The first stage of applications is the 6th of August of this year, and the second stage is the 1st of October. Just to remind you, I think you probably all know by now, but just a reminder that this program, and maybe a little unusually, starts in January. It's a calendar year. It starts in January of 22, all right? Not in September 21, January of 2022. So there's still some time available, but we have a stage process. If you're very confident about your desire to apply, we would encourage you to apply before the first stage deadline, which is the 6th of August. But if places still remain, there will be a second stage, which is the 1st of October 2021. So I wanted to underline that. There's a few questions coming through, Ali. The first one we've just covered: does the program begin in September or is it a January start? So for this first year of the program, the inaugural year, it begins in January of 22 and will run through December of 22. Now there's, let's see, Ali, here's one that might be one that you can pick up as well. The course sounds incredibly interesting. The ability to work alongside something endorsed by CNN is a brilliant opportunity. It can be challenging those from underrepresented backgrounds to break into the world of media, and the cost of the course is relatively high. Are there scholarships available? Well, first of all, I'll answer the scholarship question, but Ali, you may want to talk about that question of, you know, broadening representation from a CNN point of view as well. The answer to the scholarship question is yes, there are scholarships available. Please have a look on the website. In fact, here, thank you, Ali, on the page, as you can see, there is an MA in Journalism and International Affairs scholarship that's been established to support this MA right from the first year, and we hope to grow those scholarships as time goes on, but they will be in place from year one. As it says here, they comprise of a stipend payment of €10,000. They are competitive, but I think they're a very good support mechanism for those who may have a particular need to reach out for a scholarship. But they are competitive, and we have put down quite a bit of detail on the website about the terms and conditions of the scholarship. So please do go and have a look at that. But we very much hope that the scholarships, being, I think, quite substantive, will be helpful to students who might otherwise not have applied. And we hope that it might help bring them across the threshold to make an application to this new program. Ali, have you any thoughts on either the scholarship or the question of inclusivity?
Absolutely. I mean, on scholarships, I just want to echo what you said. And, you know, our aim and our hope is to see the scholarship pot grow over the years and to include other opportunities for funding for students. And, you know, the reason the course is sort of at that level is that we really see this as a bespoke offering and a unique opportunity that marries up industry and academia. And therefore, you know, compared to other sort of academic offerings out in the market, we believe it is the right price point. But in terms of inclusivity, this is absolutely a goal of ours, is to ensure that through programs such as this, we provide opportunity to students and young people, or people who are changing careers into journalism, who might not have the access that this program is offering into the newsroom. Through this program, they will get that access. Michael referenced, your father's old roommate at university. Well, CNN Academy is everyone's old roommate from university on this program, and we will be able to, connect you with our leading talent, with our leading journalists who are doing this on a daily basis, for you to sort of engage with them, to learn from them, and more importantly, to apply what you learn into these practical opportunities that you can then take with you, walk into any other newsroom and say, hey, this is what I can do. This is what I know how to do. And we believe that employability option is really attractive as well.
Thanks, Ali. I think that's all important. I would add to it that the team at UCD who are, supporting the presentation of this event, led by Enda Carroll, who's with us earlier, and you can reach out to Enda very directly through the UCD. That these folks are absolutely available there to talk to anyone who's interested in applying generally, but also if you have questions about funding and scholarships, maybe from the North American point of view, I know that they can talk to you about that as well. They'd be much more informed than I would be, and I'd encourage you to converse with them. I'm just having another look in the chat box here. One more question has come in, and I'd encourage you to put more questions in. We'll just stay here for as long as you ask questions, and when you stop, we'll stop. Okay, so the next question here is, what time of day will the classes be held? How many hours of in-person class time do you imagine per week? And do you think it'd be realistic to hold a part-time job while enrolled in this program? The last one of those is very hard to answer because a lot depends on personal circumstance, but I do think this is a challenging course. I mean, I won't hold back on that. Ali has said it's a bespoke course, and we really are looking for people who are going to really rise to this challenge. And so I think that it's something that for most people it would take most of their time to really undertake it well. That's my view, but I can imagine that there will be individual cases that may differ. In terms of the timing, we haven't yet decided on which days the classes will be held. Now, that will be decided in the coming weeks, so if you really is important to that question, please contact me directly, and I will either answer you directly or put you in touch with someone who can. In terms of how many hours of in-person class time we have, that's easier to calculate. I would imagine that for most students, it varies a bit, but it would be approximately 6 hours a week. You probably would be undertaking 3 seminars or workshop sessions, most of which are about 2 hours in length. Sometimes they can be longer, depending on what has been asked of you in any given week, but the average would be that. But the workload is a bit more than 6 hours a week. Think of it a little bit like an iceberg. The time you're sitting in that classroom is the 6 hours. It's the very tip of the iceberg. The amount of work that really does need to be done to get the best out of those hours is what's below the water. But as well as those hours in a classroom, you also have the other forms of access to people like Ali and myself and many more who are going to be very available to you in doing this. And especially when you're writing essays and looking for feedback, but especially also when you do that multimedia thesis or that written thesis, when you're going to have a close connection with and communication with, and an awful lot of access then at that point in time. And I think that that's something to take away from thinking about this particular course, that the amount of access that one is getting here to incredible talent via CNN is, I think, really quite remarkable and really quite different. One thing
we have a good question coming in from Sophie here about the importance of experience and whether academic and practical journalism experience will be valued equally. And I believe there's more details on the website, Sophie, but we're certainly very keen to see samples of journalistic work that can be submitted as part of the application, and anything that can support your application on that front as well. So the academic side is important, but if you have been working in the field for a number of years and you see this as an opportunity for you to level up, to train up, then we certainly are interested in seeing sample work as well.
I absolutely agree with that. There's related questions come through, Ali. What will the balance be in terms of practical work compared to more academic approach, such as essays, reports, etc.? The answer is it will be, in terms of the modules, it'll be about 50-50. But when then you get into doing a multimedia thesis, well, you know, you're doing a much more hands-on, much more practice-based form of MA at that point. So it's quite possible that almost about 2/3 of your actual workload will be much more practice-based. A lot depends on the kind of thesis that you end up doing.
But also, we have the UCD Clinton Institute. You have the America Unfiltered media platform. So this is a podcast platform. This is a newsletter platform. And you know, right now, a massive push for an organization like CNN and many other of our peers in the industry is how do we become multi-platform? How do we get our product into the user where they are using, the audience where they're using it? That means newsletters, that means podcasts. Take, for example, Dr. Sanjay Gupta's podcast that we launched over the pandemic, one of the most successful podcasts launched by CNN. Well, that's taking a TV expert and repackaging it, reproducing it for a different medium. You will have the opportunity to produce a podcast. You will have the opportunity to work and write on a newsletter, but not just write on a newsletter. You will hear from CNN journalists and CNN teams who are producing newsletters how you should produce a newsletter. You will take that knowledge and you will apply it in that practical hands-on thing. So throughout this journey, you're going to have some academic expertise and academic learning, but more importantly for us, from a CNN Academy perspective, is that practical approach and the practical experiential approach, and for us to give you feedback on your product.
Ali, there's two more questions which I'm going to pitch toward you. I think your time may be a bit limited, so I want to squeeze this all from you when we can. When submitting sample work from a portfolio, would it be placed at a disadvantage for only having experience in print? I would be keen to launch my career in broadcast, but I only have experience thus far in print throughout my 4 years at university. Thank you, Kyle.
Kyle, absolutely no disadvantage. Print, some of our best journalists come from print background. Look at Nick Payton Walsh. He used to be a print journalist for the Sunday Times. Sam Kiley used to be a print journalist. These days you need to be multi-platform. You need to be a brilliant writer. You need to be a brilliant producer. We will provide you with training in order for you to be a social storyteller, for you to be a video storyteller, audio storyteller. But the basics of writing a good story, knowing what makes a good story, knowing how to pitch a good story to a global newsroom, and then getting out there and producing a good story, that is fundamental across the board, no matter what medium you're working in. So you are not at a disadvantage if you have a print background. Ideally, this course will give you the practical training necessary for you to have a more multifaceted approach to storytelling, and certainly a way into broadcast journalism as well.
Ali, a related question. Earlier you mentioned that there are career goals tied to the program that would prepare a student for on-camera and behind-the-camera roles. What does this preparation and training look like? So,
for example, I come from a show production perspective. I used to produce a show. I used to put a show together. Well, what does that mean? That's what you're gonna, one of the workshops that we're designing in this course will help you understand what it means when we talk about show production. How do you put a rundown together? What are the elements that you need to think about that narrative arc in a show? So that is the sort of style, or what does field producing mean? You know, Michael talked a lot about some of the brilliant field producers that he's worked with. Well, what does that mean? What does field production mean? What does social verification mean? So Donnie O'Sullivan, for example, a UCD alum, he came up the ranks at CNN via the social verification desk. Well, what does that mean? How do you verify news that you find online? In a newsroom, there are many, 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 many more roles than just what you see on air. This course is designed to give you, from a CNN Academy perspective, an insight, a rare insight into the workings of an actual global newsroom. So social verification, show production, field production, and putting that all together on air. These are the sort of roles that you will get a glimpse. Now, are you going to be trained, drilled down in show production? Well, no, because none of that will happen until you are on the job and you are actually grappling with it. But we will be providing you with all the insights and knowledge and know-how so that when you do walk into that newsroom for your prospective employment, you have the language, the lexicon, the understanding, the background that gives you a leg up over any other applicant.
Ali, fantastic. Thank you so much. There's no more immediate questions, and we've gone well over the hour. So I think we can draw it to a close here. I want to thank all of you who joined us to hear Michael up front. Fascinating insights, experience, but also to Ali for also taking us into that sort of broader and deeper ways of thinking about news journalism and news production today. And that's what we're going to be doing in the new Masters. So if that's of interest to you, please look up the further details and contact us. We'll be very happy to connect with you. Thanks,
More
Ali.
than happy to answer any more questions. So as Liam said, please reach out if there's anything. If you want to, have one-on-one conversations ahead of you applying. If you want to know more, I'm sure Liam and I and others at UCD are super delighted to hear from you.
Absolutely. Take care. Bye, everyone.